Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Chloe Feng. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. A new Indonesian fee policy for domestic helpers raises questions in Hong Kong. And the University of Hong Kong reverses a ban on artificial intelligence tools after 6 months. Meanwhile, floods in Hebei province forced the evacuation of more than 1.2 million people. Employers and a domestic workers union have questioned a new policy which would make it more expensive for Hong Kongers to hire Indonesians. The Hong Kong government was urged to talk to Jakarta to resolve the issue. Janice Low has the story.
Around 41% of Hong Kong's 345,000 foreign helpers come from Indonesia. It costs between $15,000 and $18,000 to hire an Indonesian, according to Thomas Chan from the Union of Employment Agencies. The amount includes the fee for a work visa and accommodation in a hostel before the helper flies to Hong Kong. The helpers had to pay Indonesian agents a placement fee, but Jakarta has now decreed a zero-fee policy. According to an association of Indonesia employment agencies, the measure also applies to the SAR. This means Hong Kongers wishing to hire Indonesians will have to fork out up to $5,000 extra, taking the total fee to over $20,000. Betty Yong from the Employers of Domestic Helpers Association said the higher cost will be a financial burden, as some households earn only $16,000 per month.
Don't kill the employers in Hong Kong, because this will also influence the working opportunity of their people. You know, if you raise the money too high, some families cannot afford to pay for the agency, so they have to give up. So what they do is that maybe some families, they just give up their job and go back to look after their own babies.
Yong urged the government to discuss the issue with Jakarta. A representative of domestic workers welcomed Jakarta's move, but harbors doubts.
We don't want to add too much pressure to the employer too. We want the system to be fair to both the employer and the worker, because if the employer pay a lot, they also have the pressure. They also give pressure to the domestic worker, want the domestic worker to perform perfect.
The Federation of Asian Domestic Workers official called for tougher law enforcement on both sides to prevent Indonesian helpers from being overcharged. Jan Slow, HKIBC.
Hong Kong University is now allowing students to use generative artificial intelligence for schoolwork, reversing a ban months ago. The institution warns that plagiarism through ChatGPT will still be caught, even if it's harder to detect. Remy Young tells us more.
When ChatGPT was launched last year, users worldwide were shocked to learn of its ability to produce accurate responses almost instantaneously. But red flags were raised when students began using it for schoolwork. Hong Kong University banned ChatGPT in February, citing the risk of academic plagiarism. The first SAR institution to take such a drastic move has now made a U-turn. From the coming semester, students will be allowed to harness the power of generative artificial intelligence, or Gen AI. Vice President Ian Holliday explained it was never the school's intention to permanently ban the technology.
It took us 4 months, from February to June, to actually get from knowing very little about ChatGPT and Gen AI to having a comprehensive policy. That policy covers all sorts of key issues. It covers access, so that we can provide fair access to our students and ensure that nobody is left behind.
Each student will be given 20 prompts on ChatGPT each month to submit queries. Associate Vice President Pauline Chu likened the tool to a calculator. A calculator helps you do maths, but to operate it, you still need to know the fundamental concepts, she said. The school warned that cheats will still be caught.
It raises the bar for us in terms of checking and policing, but it doesn't actually introduce a new form of academic cheating. Making unacknowledged use of ChatGPT is equivalent to that.
Chief Information Officer Flora Ng said teaching staff will be provided with tools to detect if a student's work was produced with the help of ChatGPT. Raymond Yang, HKIBC.
In China, over 1.2 million people in Hebei province have been relocated to safety as heavy rainfall continues. The authorities estimate that it could take up to a month for the flood waters to recede.
China's disaster response system has been put to test again after one of the strongest storms in years brought record-breaking rainfall to the northern province of Hebei. It could take weeks for floodwaters to recede. State media said the amount of rain that fell on the province surrounding Beijing exceeded the storage capacity of its reservoirs by over twofold. The water level reportedly reached 12 meters in some areas of Zhuozhou, the hardest hit city. A bookseller said he racked up losses of over 25 million yuan in just 1 hour after his warehouse was inundated. The death toll from the floods rose after the body of a missing rescuer was found. This resident said her household had no power, water, gas and telecom links over the past few days, but she was grateful to the rescue team. Over 1.2 million people in Hebei have been evacuated to safety. Meanwhile, some parts of Inner Mongolia and Dongbei in the far north have also been battered by heavy rain, which is expected to continue for 2 more days.
43 Hong Kongers stranded by a powerful storm in Okinawa are safe after contacting the Immigration Department for help in finding transport and shelter. Severe Typhoon Khanun has claimed 2 lives in the southwestern Japanese island, which is a popular destination for tourists. At least 40 people were injured and 200,000 homes were left without electricity. The airport in the capital Naha reopened today after 2 days of closure, but 300 flights were cancelled. Khanun is expected to move slowly away from Okinawa, but is forecast to reverse course and return to the island tomorrow before heading towards Japan's main islands. A migrant crisis in New York City is at breaking point, with officials pleading for a helping hand from Washington.
I think that the federal government should take the forefront in this crisis, knowing and having all the data about where the unrest is and what is happening and what people need, and that we need to make sure that we have something where one city bearing the brunt of this doesn't seem fair to me.
Migrants have been sleeping on the street as they wait for days to get better accommodation. New York is struggling to cope with almost 100,000 migrants. The Central American and African asylum seekers risked their lives crossing the Mexican border to reach Texas. But Republican-led Texas sent them to New York, which is run by Democrats.
We have seen very little action being taken by the Biden administration. With the stroke of a pen, the president can authorize humanitarian parole for this population. He can redesignate and renew temporary protected status, and he can expedite work authorization literally without congressional approval.
The death toll in a week-long police crackdown on drug gangs in Brazil has climbed to at least 45. The latest raid took place in Rio de Janeiro, where police scooped on a poor neighborhood. 10 people were fatally shot in exchange of fire between officers and suspected gang members. Earlier in Sao Paulo state, 16 people died in clashes over a 5-day period, and 19 suspects were killed in the northeastern state of Bahia in an anti-drug campaign that began last Friday. Police said they would investigate complaints of excessive force. Private sector activity in Hong Kong contracted last month for the first time this year. The S&P Hong Kong Purchasing Managers Index dropped from 50.3 in June to 49.4 in July. A reading below 50 indicates contraction. Hong Kong's worst performance since November came amid a renewed decline in overall new orders and a faltering mainland economy. The index complier said while the pace of contraction was marginal, higher purchase costs and wages could continue to weigh on demand in coming months. And now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index closed down nearly 100 points. Top 10 equity stocks: Tencent down $1.20, Alibaba down $2, and Tracker Fund down 9 cents. HSBC lost $1.30, Meituan down 50 cents, and CCB down 2 cents. Forex trading against Hong Kong dollar, the euro is at 8.53, British pound at 9.86, and Australian dollar at 5.09. Moving on to the UK market, the London FTSE is currently down 60 points. Ocean Park has welcomed 2 new residents whose lifestyle contrasts sharply with Hong Kong's hectic culture. 2 sloths that are known for moving extremely slowly are the new exhibits at the theme park. Sloths sleep for around 15 hours a day, but are more active at around 3 p.m. Even if the sloths are having a snooze, visitors will not be disappointed because they can see other animals such as kinkajou, macaws, and ball pythons. On to the weather now. Showers tomorrow morning will give way to sunny intervals later in the day. Temperatures will range between 27 and 33 degrees, more or less the same over the weekend. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. And that is our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Chloe Feng. Thank you for watching. Good night.